The Brentwood house, lit up on the night of December 14, 2025, was not a sanctuary of triumph, but the end point of a life that once held some of the greatest soft power in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, the director of Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, and When Harry Met Sally, was killed, bringing to a close a career the public had long viewed through the glow of acclaim, laughter, and films that warmed the heart. Yet behind that name, behind the celebrated legacy, stood a cold question that had never been answered. What had truly happened in the life of a man who seemed to have everything? Rob Reiner embodied durable talent and quiet authority. He did not need noise to dominate a boardroom, nor did he need to stand in front of the camera to control the story. Money, property, political influence, professional prestige, everything once lay within his grasp. But it was there, too, that silent fractures began to form. Family pressures, generational conflict, the helplessness of a father, and a widening gap between private life and public image. Rob Reiner's death is not merely a personal tragedy. It forces a re-examination of the entire journey behind those classic films. From wealth accumulated over decades and a deliberately closed-off lifestyle meant to protect himself, to the moment everything collapsed in silence. This story does not begin at the crime scene. It begins with what Rob Reiner built to shield his own life, and with what ultimately slipped beyond his control. From the outside, Rob Reiner's life appeared to be constructed like a flawless fortress, where wealth and living space functioned as the final protective buffer against a world full of conflict. Once his career elevated him into the ranks of Hollywood's most powerful directors, Rob's assets did not exist merely on paper or in royalty statements. They took tangible form in 3 major properties, each reflecting a different facet of the same philosophy: control, privacy, and separation. The Beverly Hills estate, valued at approximately $19 million, was the most powerful jewel in that system of spaces. The home opens with a grand foyer that leads directly into living areas designed for private gatherings while preserving an atmosphere of refinement. The central kitchen is meticulously professional. Multiple ovens, a large island, and high-end appliances capable of serving both family meals and discreet entertaining. Adjacent to it, a formal dining room with built-in cabinetry displaying china and glassware evokes dinners carefully controlled in both space and guest list. Deeper inside lies a private home theater, not merely for entertainment, but a place where Rob Reiner experienced cinema through the eyes of someone who had mastered visual language for decades. A fully equipped private gym allowed him to maintain his health without ever leaving the property. The primary bedroom opens into a quieter realm, with a small sitting area and an ensuite bathroom featuring dual vanities and a deep soaking tub, creating the feel of a self-contained spa. Guest bedrooms each include their own bathrooms and generous storage, while a temperature-controlled wine cellar houses hundreds of bottles, a detail that suggests quiet accumulation rather than display. A home office, fitted with built-in shelving and ergonomic furnishings, remains deliberately separated from the main living areas. All of it connects to a landscaped backyard, where an outdoor pool and carefully maintained grounds form a space so private that the outside world feels unnecessary. The oceanfront home in Malibu, valued at around $17 million, tells a different story. Here, luxury is expressed through openness and ease. A great room with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling glass, facing the Pacific, turns light and horizon into part of the interior itself. The kitchen follows a professional chef's standard, with a high-capacity range, double refrigerators, and a breakfast nook designed for unhurried mornings. The dining area feels more intimate, paired with a small bar that supports quiet, personal conversations. A media room with reclining seats and surround sound creates a viewing experience rooted in retreat rather than spectacle. The primary bedroom includes a dedicated reading corner, while the bathroom offers a steam room and heated floors, an emphasis on absolute comfort. Secondary bedrooms are flexible, each paired with additional living spaces that function as home offices or family rooms. Outside, an infinity pool dissolves into the horizon, erasing the boundary between house and sea. A place for moments when Rob Reiner chose withdrawal over intensity. The Brentwood home, valued at approximately $13 million, carried an entirely different tone. Less performative, its layout centers on a sense of family. The kitchen is efficiently designed with expansive storage and built-in coffee machines to support daily routines. A breakfast area and shared living spaces serve as points of quiet connection, where evenings pass without ceremony. The primary bedroom prioritizes rest over scale, featuring a private dressing area and a bathroom with a soaking tub and rainfall shower. Guest rooms include secondary sitting areas that preserve personal boundaries. An outdoor pool and enclosed garden turn the property into a refuge, not for display, but for retreat. Alongside the carefully orchestrated living spaces, Rob Reiner also expressed his view of power and of himself through his car collection. It was not large, not ostentatious, but each vehicle carried symbolic weight tied to a specific chapter of his life. For Rob, cars were not status toys. They were extensions of personality, restrained, selective, and always anchored in personal narrative. The Rolls-Royce Phantom, valued at around $500,000, occupied the central place in his garage as a silent declaration of the stature Rob Reiner had reached after decades in the industry. He acquired the car following the resounding success of A Few Good Men, not to chase speed, but to arrive where a director no longer needed to prove anything. Its expansive interior, near-total sound insulation, and smooth glide through Los Angeles streets turned the Phantom into a mobile private space, one where Rob could sit in silence, think, or simply detach from the noise of the outside world. He once told friends that rides in the car evoked memories of old Hollywood, of stories his father had told him, when fame came with discretion and a necessary distance. In sharp contrast stood the Ferrari 488, valued at approximately $300,000, representing a side of Rob Reiner rarely seen by the public. He purchased it around the time he completed the bucket list, when his career had become long enough to permit moments of pure exhilaration. The Ferrari was not meant for red carpets, but for spontaneous drives, weekends along the Malibu coast where speed and engine sound became a release valve for pressure. For Rob, these were rare moments when he did not need to control pacing or calculate strategy, when he could simply drive and let the moment carry him forward. The Tesla Model S, priced at roughly $100,000, reflected a more mature phase of his thinking. It was the vehicle Rob used daily, tied to meetings, social engagements, and political activity. The quiet electric motor, efficiency, and environmental message aligned with the image of a man increasingly concerned with the social impact of personal power. Tesla was not merely a practical choice, but a quiet statement about the direction Rob Reiner wished to associate himself with in his later years. The total value of the collection did not exceed $1 million, a modest figure compared to his estimated net worth of around $200 million. Yet that restraint revealed the true nature of Rob Reiner's wealth. The bulk of what he accumulated was not visible in objects, but embedded in long-term royalty streams, film revenues, television syndication, profits from Castle Rock Entertainment, and production ventures carried out behind the scenes. His wealth did not operate in bursts, but in steady, enduring cycles, much like the career he built. Like his homes, these cars were not meant to display wealth. but to serve a tightly controlled way of life. Together, they trace the arc of a man who moved from television actor to powerful director, from the figure in front of the camera to one who chose to remain behind it, and from the thrill of victory to the pursuit of quiet. All of these assets, though accumulated through talent and discipline, ultimately remained only a shell. A shell Rob Reiner believed thick enough to protect his private life before everything abruptly slipped beyond his control. But all of those layers, the houses, the cars, the assets, the soft power, proved unable to stop the moment when everything collapsed on the night of December 14th, 2025. The Brentwood home, designed as a quiet refuge, became the scene of an ending no film script Rob Reiner ever prepared for. He and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, were found dead within the most private space of their lives. Not an accident, not illness, but a homicide, leaving a sense of shock and emptiness across Hollywood, a place long accustomed to seeing Rob as a calm, rational man who always seemed to be in control. In the immediate aftermath of Rob Reiner's death, his estate entered a different state altogether, from assets under absolute control in life to matters governed by law, filings, and decisions that could no longer be postponed. The estate, estimated at roughly $200 million, ceased to symbolize success and instead became a system that had to be dismantled piece by piece. Real estate holdings, financial interests, trusts, and inheritance rights. As of now, no will or detailed distribution plan has been made public. However, U.S. legal experts have focused on a key factor: California's Slayer statute. Under this principle, any individual determined to have intentionally caused the death of the person leaving the estate may be entirely barred from inheriting, even if that individual is named in the will. Notably, application of this rule does not necessarily require a final criminal conviction. In certain circumstances, a civil finding alone may be sufficient to trigger disqualification from inheritance. Against this backdrop, with Nick Reiner having been charged in connection with the murders of his parents, the possibility that he will be excluded from any share of the estate has become a scenario frequently cited by legal analysts. As for the remaining children, Jake Reiner, Romy Reiner, and Tracy Reiner, attorneys suggest that the estate is more likely to be allocated through individual trusts rather than through direct transfer of large assets. This approach aligns with the caution and control Rob Reiner displayed throughout his life, ensuring long-term benefit for his children without placing on them the burden of managing complex or dispute-prone holdings. Such trusts are typically structured with conditions tied to time, purpose, or phased access. For Tracy Reiner, his daughter from a previous marriage, the distribution may be structured separately, reflecting the layered family framework Rob Reiner maintained over many years. These distinctions do not necessarily indicate favoritism. Rather, they point to the way he organized family life along clearly defined boundaries, even in financial matters. Until formal legal proceedings are opened and the courts reach final determinations, no one can state with certainty where Rob Reiner's estate will ultimately go. What is certain is this: the simultaneous deaths of both spouses transformed wealth, originally built to protect family, into a cold legal equation, one in which the law must now stand in for decisions they no longer had the chance to make. To understand why Rob Reiner lived and chose as he did, it is necessary to return to a time when he had nothing to lose except the Reiner name itself. Not to seek justification, but to understand how a person was shaped long before everything collapsed. Rob Reiner was born on March 6, 1947, in the Bronx, New York, into a family where fame was not a choice, but a default setting of life. His father, Carl Reiner, was not yet a comedy legend, but he was already a man obsessed with rhythm, discipline, and the pursuit of perfection in storytelling. His mother, Estelle Reiner, carried the warmth of theater and music, yet she also understood all too well the darker side of the spotlight. From an early age, Rob grew up surrounded by conversations about scripts, comic timing, and backstage stories. Things that might be dreams for other children, but which gradually became an invisible pressure for him. Rob Reiner's childhood home was not short on laughter, but it was laughter that was controlled, purposeful, and always tied to expectation. Names like Mel Brooks and Norman Lear appeared at family gatherings not as idols, but as benchmarks to be measured against. When the family moved from New York to Los Angeles while Rob was just 13, the change was more than geographic. It placed the boy at the heart of an industry where every comparison was public, and where his father's shadow became more present than ever. During the turbulent teenage years of the 1960s, Rob Reiner did not rebel, nor did he try to shatter the mold. Instead, he chose to observe, to step back, and to accumulate, an early reflex of someone who would grow accustomed to shaping stories from behind rather than standing at their center. Facing the prospect of the draft amid the Vietnam War, anxieties about the future, and the constant pressure to prove himself within an unusually prominent family, Rob developed a cautious, reserved temperament, always calculating an exit strategy. Even his earliest experiments with acting and writing failed to bring a sense of release. Rob frequently doubted himself, fearing that any success would be credited to the name Carl Reiner, while any failure would belong solely to him. Those years did not produce a sudden prodigy, but instead forged a patient individual with a tendency to control his surroundings in order to minimize risk, a trait that would follow him throughout his career and deeply shape his private life in the years to come. Rob Reiner's early years in the profession bore little resemblance to a red carpet ascent, despite carrying a surname powerful enough to open many doors. After studying at UCLA, he did not step directly into the spotlight, but instead began with small television roles in the late 1960s, Batman, The Andy Griffith Show. These were brief appearances, easily forgotten by audiences, yet sufficient for him to observe how the Hollywood system operated from within, who made decisions, who was replaced, and who existed merely as a name on a supporting cast list. At that stage, Rob Reiner was not a figure of note. He was neither promoted as a new discovery nor celebrated as a rising talent. On set, he conducted himself like a cautious apprentice, listening more than speaking, avoiding any signal that he was leaning on Carl Reiner's reputation. In that quiet discipline, Rob developed a strong internal drive to prove he could stand on his own abilities, even if it meant moving more slowly than others of his generation. The true turning point came in 1971, when Norman Lear cast Rob Reiner as Michael "Meathead" Stivic in All in the Family. The role of the liberal son-in-law, constantly clashing with the conservative Archie Bunker, quickly made Rob a familiar face on American television. But the fame was not rooted in comedy alone. The character placed Rob at the center of the era's most volatile social debates: race, gender, the Vietnam War, civil rights, transforming the sitcom into a space for political dialogue inside American living rooms. 2 Emmy Awards gave Rob Reiner the legitimacy he had previously lacked, but they also placed him inside a new frame. The success of All in the Family taught him a crucial lesson. Entertainment could carry ideas as long as the rhythm was subtle enough that audiences did not feel preached to. From that point on, Rob developed a professional instinct that would follow him throughout his career, telling accessible stories with an underlying layer of social reflection that could not easily be ignored. At the height of All in the Family, Rob Reiner chose to change course, a move uncommon for a television actor at the peak of success. He gradually stepped away from the camera to seek control behind the scenes where stories are shaped from the outset. This is Spinal Tap, 1984, was the first test of that decision. A low-budget mockumentary satirizing the rock music world, built on improvisation and creative freedom rather than conventional structure. The film didn't become an immediate box office sensation, but it spread slowly and persistently, eventually earning cult classic status. More importantly, it revealed Rob Reiner's ability to read the cultural moment, knowing when to push satire to its limits and when to step back, allowing audiences to recognize the absurdities of their own world. From there, Rob Reiner's career accelerated along a rare trajectory. Stand By Me, 1986, marked a decisive emotional shift as he explored childhood, friendship, and the anxieties of boys standing at the threshold of adulthood. Quiet rather than showy, the film carried a deep personal imprint, signaling Rob's readiness to move beyond laughter into more fragile, emotional territory. The Princess Bride, 1987, further demonstrated his ability to balance multiple genres within a single narrative space: fairy tale, comedy, romance, and adventure. And with When Harry Met Sally, 1989, Rob Reiner reached another peak, transforming everyday conversations and uncertainties about love and time into enduring cinematic material that would redefine the romantic comedy for decades to come. The 1990s elevated Rob Reiner to a new level of power. A Few Good Men was not merely a commercial success. It placed him at the heart of political cinema, where power, morality, and truth collide directly. The film showed that Rob was no longer concerned solely with personal emotion, but increasingly with the structures of power that shape society, a concern that became more pronounced in his project choices. Alongside his directing work, co-founding Castle Rock Entertainment expanded Rob Reiner's influence beyond individual creative roles. He was no longer just making films. He was helping decide which stories would be produced, which voices would be amplified, and which values would be prioritized within popular culture, a form of soft power few individuals sustained for so long. By the 2000s, Rob Reiner was no longer chasing box office peaks or personal validation. Projects such as The Bucket List reflected a clear internal shift toward time, mortality, and unfinished aspects of life. From that point on, his career was not a sequence of consecutive victories, but a process of transformation, from television actor to storyteller director, and finally to a behind-the-scenes figure capable of shaping an entire creative ecosystem without needing to stand at the center of the spotlight. By that stage, Rob Reiner had grown accustomed to standing behind every story. On set, he knew precisely when to raise the emotional stakes and when to leave space for silence. He understood the rhythm of feeling, how to guide people through conflict and send them out of the theater with a sense of comfort. Yet it was precisely when cinema no longer needed him as it once had that Rob Reiner confronted an unavoidable truth. The control he had exercised all his life had never truly existed beyond the screen. Because in the most private space of all, family, Rob Reiner was not a director. He had no authority to arrange outcomes, no power to rewrite scenes, and no ability to stop the story when it moved in a direction he did not want. The role that left him most uncertain and most powerless was not that of an artist or a public figure, but one he rarely spoke about: a father. For most of his career, Rob Reiner largely avoided discussing his family in public, not because he did not love them, but because he understood something deeply. There are stories which, once exposed to the light, can never remain intact. Only very late in life, when time was no longer on his side, did Rob allow himself to pause in front of a seemingly harmless question about his children. and realize it was the hardest question he had ever faced. In a rare interview, Rob sat beneath studio lights, looking nothing like the director who once commanded massive sets. He leaned slightly forward, hands clenched, his gaze lowered for a long time. There was none of the confidence of a man who had controlled the emotions of millions. Only the hesitation of someone asking himself whether he had the courage to continue speaking. "There are things," he said slowly, "that you only understand once you become a father. And there are things, no matter how long you've been one, that you still cannot fix." It was the first time Rob Reiner directly mentioned his son in public. Nick Reiner. Nick was born in 1993, the son of Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner, the woman who had been by his side since the late 1980s. Nick grew up in a household where creativity was assumed, where cinema was not just a profession, but the rhythm of daily life. He lacked neither money nor opportunity, nor doors that would open simply because of the Reiner name. But there was one thing he lacked early on: the sense that he was allowed to be an ordinary person. Nick's grandfather was Carl Reiner, a towering figure in American comedy. His father was Rob Reiner, the director behind films that became shared memories across generations. Those names were not merely fame, they were standards suspended overhead, large enough to make any individual effort feel small by comparison. In that environment, the relationship between father and son was never simple. Nick later acknowledged that throughout much of his childhood, he and Rob were not especially close. Rob loved his son, but much of his time belonged to film sets, consecutive projects, and a world where Nick often stood at the margins. There was affection, but not enough proximity to become an anchor. That pressure followed Nick into every choice and every step, gradually turning what should have been motivation into an unnamed burden. While Rob Reiner's other children found their own paths, Jake Reiner building a career as an actor and screenwriter, Romy Reiner pursuing independent projects, Tracy Reiner establishing a stable footing, Nick was the one who drifted off course. Not from a lack of ability, but because of battles fought internally, where no spotlight was bright enough to show the way. Rob Reiner recalled that the earliest signs were subtle. Nick came home later. Shared meals grew infrequent. Answers shortened. Eye contact lingered less. He did not cause trouble. He simply began to fade out of family life. Nick started drinking at 15, first as experimentation, then habit, and eventually dependence. Other substances followed, slowly and quietly, as a way for Nick to temporarily escape the name he had carried since birth. When Rob confronted his son about addiction, he did not shout or threaten. He spoke slowly, weighing every word, like a father still believing honesty and patience might save everything. Nick listened, nodded, promised to try, the way a child does when he knows he needs to reassure his parent. For a brief period, things seemed to calm, enough for Rob to hope. Then Nick entered rehab for the first time. That hope did not collapse in a single moment. It eroded gradually, through each relapse, each late-night phone call, each unannounced drive. Nick entered rehabilitation a total of 17 times. There were periods when he refused treatment, drifted, and lived without a home. Each time, Rob was there. No cameras, no media, just a father waiting. In a desperate effort to understand his son, Rob Reiner brought the story to the screen. Being Charlie was not made to save Nick, but to help Rob understand what was unfolding before him. He admitted, "I can direct a film, but I cannot direct my son's life." The film did not produce a miracle. It merely confirmed a painful truth. Love and understanding are not always enough to keep a person standing. Alongside this family tragedy, Rob faced other losses. The death of Carl Reiner took away his father, his guide, and the greatest moral anchor of his life. And as Hollywood gradually turned away from the kinds of stories he once told, Rob Reiner entered old age not with serenity, but with the sense of being slowly withdrawn from the very world he had helped create. In the end, Rob Reiner, the man who spent his life orchestrating the emotions of audiences, had to learn how to live inside a story he could not continue writing, could not revise, and could not direct. He did not turn pain into a lesson, nor use it to justify himself. He simply carried it quietly, as an inseparable part of who he was. Rob Reiner's legacy does not fit neatly into a list of classic films or box office figures that once crossed the billion-dollar mark. It resides in something far harder to measure: his belief that decency still has a place in an increasingly cold world. From All in the Family to Stand By Me, from When Harry Met Sally to A Few Good Men, Rob Reiner consistently chose to tell stories in which people are forced to face one another through dialogue, through conscience, through questions without easy answers. He did not build his career on shock or cruelty. He patiently pursued the conviction that cinema could be accessible, humane, and deep enough to make audiences pause and think. As a director, Rob Reiner never sought to flaunt a signature style. He rarely left an overt fingerprint on the frame. What he left instead was space for characters to breathe, to speak, to make mistakes, and to try to repair them. As a producer, he helped shape an entire storytelling ecosystem through Castle Rock Entertainment, where projects like Seinfeld and Misery existed not because they were safe, but because they dared to be different. And as a citizen, he accepted the cost of discomfort in order to preserve his right to speak out, even when doing so made him a polarizing figure in his later years. But his greatest and most painful legacy lies in what could not be completed. A father unable to save his son from addiction. A son forced to go on living after losing the man who had been his lifelong anchor. A storyteller who believed in happy endings, yet had to learn how to live with chapters that offered no resolution. Rob Reiner did not hide from that reality. He did not turn pain into philosophy. He simply acknowledged it, quietly, honestly, and without apologizing for his helplessness. Rob Reiner's death closed the life of a man who once believed that if he did the right thing long enough, the world would respond with fairness. It did not. Yet it is precisely in the gap between that belief and a harsher reality that Rob Reiner left his deepest mark. He reminds us that kindness is not always rewarded, that love is not always enough to save, and that some people do not fail because they chose wrongly, but because they dared to place their faith in the most fragile things. When the stage lights fade, Rob Reiner leaves behind no perfect legend. He leaves the image of a human being, talented, conflicted, marked by loss, who tried to live according to what he believed, even when the cost proved far greater than he ever imagined. And perhaps that is his true legacy, not the stories he told the world, but the way he chose to live inside his own story, all the way to its final chapter. If you were ever moved by a Rob Reiner film, leave a heart. A quiet tribute to an artist who devoted his life to telling stories about decency and human compassion.